Pastor Ed, our youth pastor and connections pastor. If you didn't know, he's a big North Carolina fan. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure because he was at the Christmas thing last night. So I want to make sure you did see the score, right? When you got all right, I didn't know whether he recorded that or not, but
Okay, you're going to take your moment.
oh,
Every now and then, if you check out who's still winning the series, we're just trying to let you catch up.
yeah, I got you. All right. It's all right. It's all right. I can handle it. Well, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to worship at Central this morning. If you're visiting, my name is Andrew. I'm one of the pastors here at Central, and on behalf of the staff, let me say this: Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. We love you all. We're glad that you've joined us today, and just such a special time. Today's Christmas Sunday. It kind of don't feel like Christmas Sunday because it's a week away, but I thought about it every Sunday is Christmas Sunday. Every Monday is Christmas Monday. Because Christmas isn't a date, it's about who He is, isn't it? If you've been with us, we've been talking about doing a series in the month of December titled He Is. And how when you have a revelation of who He is, it causes a revolution in your life. When you begin to see Him for who He really is. Last week we talked about the shepherds, how it was revealed to them that He is Christ the Lord. And when they come to the revelation that He's Lord, what was their reply? Let's go. Let's go. Let's go to Bethlehem. That's the normal reaction when something is realized. I was at the Scott County Frederick Douglass game this past week. It was a good ball game, and one of Scott County players made a great move and went down. I heard somebody behind me yelling, "Let's go! Let's go!" I turned around. Yep, he was from our church. I won't say his name, but he was on these drums just a minute ago. You see, that's the normal reply when something great, when you witness something great. God, let me tell you something. God's doing something great in our day right now, in this church body. But you got to be looking for it. Sometimes you got to be looking for it to see it. As pastor, I get to see those things perhaps more than others sometimes. I had a mother come here a week or so ago and say, my son's asking for a nice Bible for Christmas. You know what I say to that? I say, let's go. I prayed the word the other night when they come down. I noticed there was some here who's grieving, some here who are caretakers, some who are here on walkers. I noticed midlife people here. I noticed 3 young men, teenage boys came in packing their Bibles, the hard copy, and sat down. I thought as the word was read in front of them, you know what I say to that? Let's go. There was a young lady that called me and said, "Drew, I've got a ball game. I've got a ball game at 6:15 during Pray the Word. Is there any way the doors could be open at 5 o'clock so that I could come in here and get on my knees and pray this place in?" You know what I say to that? Let's go. But you know what? When you say let's go, as you go, you got to know where you're going. You got to know the way, don't you? A lot of people get fired up about Christ, who He is. Say, let's go. That's where I want to go. And they never find the way. I'll never forget when I got my driver's license. I was 16. I was excited. So let's go. And you're real excited when you get your driver's license when it took you 4 times to get them. But I finally got them. I said, let's go. You know where I wanted to go first? I grabbed them. I went to the mall. I said, I'm going to go to the mall. I'm going to go to the mall by myself. And I remember going up Leestown Road because we lived out in Lancelot. Went up Leestown Road, and I hit that exit by the Veterans Hospital. And then I realized, that's as far as I know. And I was on the road, and I was like, oh, no. And I'd never been on a busy road like New Circle Road. It wasn't an interstate, but I was just used to country roads, and I began to panic a little bit, and I didn't even realize how exits worked. You could get on and off, and I thought, I'm just going to stay straight. I'm just going to stay straight until I see something I recognize. And there was White Castle, recognized that, and Burgers and Shakes. But remember, I was on New Circle Road, so what happens if you keep going straight? There was White Castle. There was Burgers and Shakes. I think it was the day I realized New Circle Road really is a circle. So I panicked. I went downtown. I saw the big buildings. I thought, oh, get downtown, I'll find somebody. Got downtown. Of course, that was worse than being on New Circle Road. And I found a man who was walking the streets, and I could tell he probably walked the streets a lot. But I pulled over to him. I said, "Sir, can you tell me the way back to Georgetown?" And he began to give me directions and turn left here, turn right here, get back to Georgetown Road. And I was confused. A lot of times we need to realize, those of us that have been walking in the way, we need to realize when we're telling somebody else, it can be confusing if they've never been in it. But he began to tell me, and I was confused, and I said, this isn't going to work. So I pulled out my wallet, and I said, I did something you would die if your kids did, probably. I said, sir, I will pay you to get in my car and ride with me to show me the way to Georgetown, and then I'll bring you back. Uber backwards. I was paying him to ride with me. And so he gets in the car, and he shows me, gets me all the way back to Georgetown Road and said, sir, all you got to do is go straight from here. And then I realized something. He said, now take me back. And I thought, if I take him back, I paid no attention how I just got here. I said, this ain't going to work. I said, sir, can we do this another way? And I reached in my wallet, and I guess I gave him all I had. I couldn't have much at 16. I said, I will pay you to walk back to downtown. And he did it. He did it. Now, you kids are here, and you're saying, why didn't you just ask Google or Siri how to get there? Huh? Because this is back when we were tough, right? We had to find a way. We had to find a way. This morning, I want to read about some men from the Christmas story who knew where they wanted to go, and they made it there. They had to find a way. Had to find a way. I'm talking about the story of the wise men. You know, we've been reading in the book of Luke. You know what the story of the wise men is? Anybody? It's Matthew, isn't it? Man, I was talking to one of you the other day in the schools, and you said, where are we going to be at this week? I said, we're going to be reading about the wise men. She said, oh, you've been in Luke. That's not in Luke. That's in Matthew. And I thought, how did you know that quick? I had to Google it. I had to look at it. I said, how'd you know that quick? You know, I can quote you every line to MC Hammer's, you can't touch this, right? Why? Because back in the day, I listened over and over and listened. Let me ask you something. When you read the Word of God, do you listen to it? Do you listen to it? Matthew 2, verses 1. Let's read the story of the wise men. 12 verses. Jesus was born in the town of Bethlehem in Judea. During the reign of King Herod, about that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem asking, where's the newborn king of the Jews? We've seen his star as it arose, and we have come to worship him. Herod was deeply disturbed by their question, as well as all of Jerusalem, and he called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law. Where did the prophets say the Messiah would be born, he asked them. In Bethlehem, they said. For this is what the prophet wrote, O Bethlehem of Judah, you are not just a lowly village in Judah, for a ruler will come from you who will be the shepherd for my people Israel. Then Herod sent a private message to the wise men asking them to come see him. At this meeting, he learned the exact time when they first saw the star, and then he told them, go to Bethlehem to search carefully for the child. When you find him, come back and tell me so I can go and worship him too. After this interview, the wise men went their way. Once again, the star appeared to them, guiding to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house where the child and his mother Mary were, and they fell down before him and worshiped him. Then they opened their treasure chests and gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But when it was time to leave, look at this, they went home another way, because God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. The wise men were a group of men who knew where they wanted to go. They just didn't quite know how to get there yet. They tried going downtown for just a minute, didn't they, and asking. You know, many people's spiritual lives, I thought about that illustration of me driving, are like that. They get real excited about who Christ is and where they're going, but they never seek the way. They never learn the way, and therefore they spend most of their life going in circles rather than ever going forward. But the wise men didn't do that. They didn't have to go back home without ever reaching their destination, about ever coming into the presence. Today, I don't want you to go back home without knowing the way. I love how it says, we find a key phrase, I think, in Matthew 2, 1 through 2, and them finding the way. I love how the New King James Version says it. It says, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem saying, where is he? Where is he? You know, I find it interesting that at Jesus' birth, it starts out with these wise men saying, where is he? And in the tomb, after he rose again, do you remember what Mary Magdalene come along saying in the end? Where is he? Where have you put him? Even to Jesus, she thought he was a gardener. She said, just tell me where he is. You know, many people ask that today. Where is he? Oftentimes, though, it's out of devastation. All the devastation that we've seen on our phones and what's going on in western Kentucky with the tornadoes, how many people, and rightfully so, I would be too, standing there, especially at this time of year, everything's gone. Don't you imagine many of them are going, where are you? Where are you in the midst of this? And we've seen little clips on our phones and stuff of people showing up, people coming, and God is showing up, doing what he does, comforting. I love how I talked to the sheriff office the other day, and I said, are y'all going through the state or somebody like that? They said, no, we're going through a church down there. It's always a church. And I love that, and I've been so encouraged by how many of you have rose up. What can I give? What can we do? What are we going to plan to do in the future? And I love that. But I thought, you know what? Isn't it awful that it takes us a devastation like that to get motivated? Because the truth is, many people's lives spiritually look just like those pictures. Devastation. Many people's marriages look just like those pictures. They're leveled. And we get motivated by those. Why? Because it's immediate. They need immediate help, yes. And I believe that Jesus would be the first one there giving waters. But let me tell you something. This place on Wednesday nights is full of young people who need immediate help. They're going to marry somebody soon. And if they don't know God, then the person they marry is probably not going to know God. They're not going to know the way. They're going to have babies that don't know the way. And while that devastation is awful, and I think we should be all about it, but don't forget something. They'll rebuild. You see, that devastation, that's temporary. But someone going to hell is forever. Forever. It ought to motivate us. It ought. You think about the circumstances that the wise men cried out, where is he? They weren't coming out of brokenness and shatteredness, were they? They were coming to worship. Mary Magdalene, she was broken on where he's at, but she wasn't searching for help. She was searching for him himself. Far too often, our circumstances is what causes us to say, God, where are you? Rather than letting where are you drive our circumstances. Everything about our lives ought to be driven out of where is he? Looking for him in every day. You see, the answer to where is he is answered in understanding in who he is. John 14:5, Thomas said to him, you remember on that last night, he said, Lord, we don't know where you're going. So how can we know the way? And comes that famous verse in verse 6. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except, that word means no other, except through me. He is the way. This story is all about the way being found in it. Matthew 2:9, after the wise men went on their way, once again the star appeared to them, guiding them, showing them the way. It went ahead of them and stopped where the child was. I love that. And it says when they saw it, they were filled with joy. You remember last week when we talked about joy, what the definition of joy is, and we said it's the settled assurance that Jesus is Lord. And I loved how it says they went their way. Because in the beginning when I saw that, I said, oh, God, you want me to show how it originally was their way, and then it's going to go to his way. And I felt him saying, no, their way was a pretty good way. Their way was a way of seeking. You see, because they set out seeking, it says the star appeared. And it settled. I love it. Star's one of the most famous characters in this story, isn't it? We put it on the tree. You know, I often thought, why did they see the star? What was it that stood out about the wise men that saw the star? You know what? They were looking for it. They were looking for it. They were astrologers. You remember the last night in that upper room when Philip chimed in after Thomas said, we don't know where you're going? Philip chimed in and said, Father, Jesus, just show us the Father. Just show us that. We just want to get there. Just show us the Father. That's enough. And Jesus said, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. But to see Jesus, you got to look for him. You got to look for him. That's why the Bible says, if you seek me, you'll find me. But oftentimes that verse is left quoted that way. In Jeremiah 29:13, though, it says, you will seek me and find me when? When you seek me with all your heart. You'll seek me and find me with all your heart. When you seek me with all your heart, you're never really even seeking him until you seek him with all your heart. So if we say the phrase over and over at Christmas, wise men still seek him, if wise men still seek him, let me ask you something. How do you seek him? You know the reason I didn't remember how to get to the mall, even though I'd been there 1,000 times with my mom? Because I didn't pay attention to it. I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't looking for the way. I was just concerned about the destination. Many people spend their whole lives going to church and Bible studies and all that, and they never pay attention to the way. They never look for it. They never see it. Always in. You know, the wise men. History says that perhaps they were from Persia or Babylon. If they were from Persia, it meant they were 600 miles from Bethlehem. If they were from Babylon, it was 1,400 miles. Can you imagine the trouble that they had to go to get their families together, their belongings, their clothes, the animals that they were going to eat on the way, because it takes a long time to walk by foot from here to Colorado, or perhaps the same distance from here to Miami. And they walked all that way for what circumstance? To worship him. And we can't even get out of the bed an hour early in the morning and get into the Word and spend time. Where is he? You know, we've taught our kids to say, where is he, haven't we? One of the main traditions now at Christmas is the elf on the shelf, right? I ain't going to dog him. We do it. I understand. But our kids come down and the elf just magically appears different places in the house, right? And the kids get up and they look for him. Where is he? And some of you parents have gotten so creative. We put it on Facebook and all that. Remember I talked about when you get on Facebook and you get to comparing, it robs you of joy. Some parents look at other parents and how far they're going out and they're like, man, I'm not very good at all. But let me tell you something. There's going to be many parents on the day of judgment stand before the Lord, and they have taught their kids to be more about where is he with a stupid elf than Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords, King of Kings. That's why people are lost. They don't know how to look for him. Because they were really looking. They set out to follow him because they were really looking. In Matthew 2:11, it says they entered the house. I love that. This whole story of going and trying to find, and all of a sudden, boom, they entered the house where the child and his mother Mary were. You know what that simply meant? They came into the presence. Yes, simply came into the presence. And I thought about how simple that is. Just open the door. All that way and then just a door. How simple. You know, I said young people would say, why wouldn't you ask Google or Siri? Because that technology wasn't available. You couldn't do it. Think about how simple it is now just to say, take me to the mall. But how profound that technology is to be able to do that. That's the way salvation is. Such a simple thing, just that Jesus stands at the door. And the thing is, I'd say the wise men had to knock. The Bible tells us, it says Jesus knocks. and it's just on the other side of the door. But how profound it was to get that door, for it to lead up, for that to happen. I'll never forget Andrew Brown. We'll tell the story often when he adopted Jude from Africa, and all the paperwork and finances and shots and traveling and all this months and months led up to he was standing on the other side of the door. And that little boy was in there getting ready to have his life changed. These wise men had traveled all that way. And now, there they were, right on the other side. I believe there's somebody here this morning who is right on the other side of the door. How simple, yet how profound. And I love in John 10:7, we get a picture of that door. Jesus says, therefore again, John 10:7 through 9, very truly I tell you, you ready? I am the gate. I am the gate for the sheep. All who have before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and out and find pasture. The thief only comes to steal and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the gate, the narrow way to be saved. He is the way to be saved. I'm the gatekeeper. I'm the shepherd. He's the gatekeeper. He's the shepherd within, but First off, he's the gate. He's the way that has been made. Disney World has one gate, one entrance everybody comes through. Kings Island has a gate that everybody has to enter. You know, I remember going to the county fairs, and I wouldn't have money, and me and my buddies would park down the county park, and we'd hop the ropes. We didn't come through the gate. We got to come in and ride rides and experience it, but something never felt right. Like I wasn't supposed to be there. Like I hadn't come the right way. Acts 4:12 says salvation is found in no one else. For there's no other name under heaven given by mankind to which we must be saved. There is no other except Jesus. No one comes to the Father except me. One way, through the gate, through the narrow gate. The narrow gate. It's offered to everyone. We're all about inclusive. Everybody's included nowadays. The offer is whosoever, whoever. But it's very exclusive to those that enter it. You know, Wade and I've hunting growing up, I've been known to trespass a little. In my former days, last week, no, I'm just kidding. I've been known to hop a fence. I've killed deer on other people's property I didn't have no business being on. I got to experience it. I got to do all that. Something didn't feel right. Something bothered me. I didn't come through the gate. Wade and I have a hunting lease this year. We had to search for it. We had to get insurance for it. We had to find the people. We had to go through all this paperwork and pay the fee to be paid. But none of that did any good till we showed up and we met the owner at the gate. And she gave me a key. And she said, it's yours to come in, to go in and out and find pasture, to experience life. But you got to come through the gate. He is the way. The narrow way. You say, how do I come in? You simply step up to it and you ask permission because he's made it available. You count the cost that he is Lord and you say, can I come in? Can I be a part? They went into the house in verse 11 and here's what they did. When they entered the gate, when they came into his presence, they fell down and they worshiped him. They bowed down. You see, he's the way to worship. No other way to worship the Father except through the way. That's the only way. They fell down. Let me ask you something. Do you fall down on your knees? Not here. Not in front of everybody. Do you fall down on your knees in your house? Is there a time? Some of you are older, and I know maybe you can't, but those of you that can, do you get on your knees? Like I know this is getting, maybe, I don't want to make it sound routine or ritualistic. But one way to gauge whether you really realize who he is, if you've got kids, let me ask you something. How many times have they walked in on you and you've been on your knees? I'll never forget what Billy Graham said one time in an interview. He said, if I could do it all again, I would cancel half my conferences. Even though millions were saved, I'd cancel half of them. And they said, what would you do with that time? He said, I would get on my knees in the privacy of my house and I would tell him he is Lord. And I would tell him how good he is because he said, it took me all these years to learn that that's where the power is. Worship him. Do you know what it is to worship? See, it says every knee will bow at what? At the name of Jesus. Not even at the revelation of who he is, but simply at the name. It says they fell down and worshiped him, and only then, after they began to spend time in his presence, they opened their treasure chest. Then they opened their treasure chest and gave them gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Romans says, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true act of worship. You see, when you come and you begin to spend time with him, it drives you, it makes you want to give your gold, your frankincense, and myrrh. And you know what that is? It's yourself, your time, your desires, your money, your want, just everything about you to begin to give. And you know what happens when you begin to do that? You begin to live out baptism. You identify with him and his death, his burial, and his resurrection as you go life. And what happens when you identify with somebody? You know something about them. Last week when we honored PT, I looked at Corey and I said, I understand, Corey, how tough it is for you to be here and support him while I know your family's in ministry. I've been there with my dad, and I can relate to her in that I know that about him. Do you know things about Jesus because you identify with him? I love how it says, John 14:7. If you really know me, Jesus says, you'll know my Father as well. You know how many farms I've got permission to go on, not because I knew the farmer or the owner, but because I went to high school with their sons. And the son got me in with the Father, and then I got to know the Father. You see, he's the way to know the Father. That's perhaps one of the greatest things that he's the way is that you can know God. Is that real to you? Is that real as a person sitting next to you that you know him? That you hear from him? That you know, a lot of people want to be secondhand in that. Just like Herod. You go look for him, tell me, and then I'll come worship too. Let me tell you something. You ought never have to look to a pastor to have something plainly spelled out, because we have a God who desires to tell it to you, to speak it to you. I love in John 10:4, it says, his sheep follow him because they what? Know his voice. They know it. That means all of us. They know. They never follow a stranger because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. In fact, they run away. Do you know his voice? Oh, we've got a God that just desires to speak to us. It's often hard to hear for the clutter. The other night at that same ball game that I was telling you about, I was at, and the fouls were against us 7-0. They needed to know that, right? The refs needed to know that. And I noticed there was nobody sitting in my aisle. And it was loud in there and a lot of clutter, and the refs were on that end of the floor, so I got up and walked to the other end of the aisle so that they could hear me, right? And I began yelling, the fouls are 7-0. And after that, I apologized to a couple of people sitting around. I said, I shouldn't have done that. Got bent out of shape. Shouldn't have done that. And they said, we didn't even hear you. But now there was one going, sit down, preacher. You know who it was? My wife. Why? She recognizes my voice. She heard above the clutter. She heard me. She knows me because she spent time with me. But you know, God, even though he desires for us to hear something, he's not yelling above the clutter. God doesn't speak that way. Most of the time. Most of the time it's in a still voice. I heard a story the other day about a man who was working in an ice cellar back in the days when they didn't have refrigerators, and they would throw hay on the ice, and he lost a good wristwatch down in there. And several of the townsmen come and tried to help him find it, and they couldn't find it. And there was a little boy in town that went down in there and said, I'm going to try to find it, and he come out with the man's watch. He said, how'd you do that? He said, well, I closed the door. Shut out the world. I shut out the noise for a little while, and I laid there into the dark, and I listened till I heard the second hand ticking. That's the way God speaks. Oftentimes in the stillness. That's why Scripture says, be still and know the Father. Here's what hearing from the Father does. Isaiah 30:21, I love this Scripture. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, this is what? The way. Walk in it. You see, Jesus is not just the way we're saved. He's not just the way to the Father, to know the Father, but he is the way to walk. He's not just a decision to be saved. He's the way to walk. I love in Matthew 7:12, it says, but when it was time to leave, they went home how? Another way. They walked another way. Why? Because God told them in a dream. You see, now, because they'd been in his presence and worshiped in his presence, they could hear from him. And he said, don't go back that way. You need to walk another way. You know, James, if you want to come, we'll prepare to close. You know, Jesus is not just, like I say, he's not just a way to be saved. He's not just a way to know the Father. It's through all that. Then you learn the way to what? It's the way we grieve. It's the way we do business deals. It's the way we handle things that come in our life that are out of our control. It's the way we handle sicknesses. Everything that we do. Do you know Christians in the early days weren't called Christians? They weren't called the church. They were called followers of the way. The way. You see, church has got to be more than something you attend. It's got to be the way that you live. In every detail, every aspect of your life. It's not just the way we walk, it's also the way we talk. That we stand out, that we look different. Young people, I know, man. Everybody used that foul language and all that stuff back when we were in school too. But now it's reached a whole new level. The teachers use it. They use it in class. I hear coaches use it. Stuff people I wouldn't expect to use it. Let me tell you something. Young person, you make it up in your mind that Christ is Lord, and when they begin all that talk and you begin doing that, let me tell you something. You think, I'm going to do it another way. I'm going to speak out of character because of who He is and because He's Lord. Let me tell you something. Passion conferences next month. I'd love to go to that. There's going to be 60,000 people singing, lifting up praises in Atlanta. Tim Tebow, big name speakers are going to be there. But let me tell you something. I don't believe that moves heaven any more than when a young person says, I'm going to do it another way, or whatever age it is. And you can be a part of that walk. Another way. You know, Jesus showed us that way. He showed us that way. On that night, I've referred back quite a bit to the night before He died. You remember? It said because He knew He had all authority. He knew that He had come from God, and He knew that He was going. In other words, He knew who He was, He knew where He was at, and He knew where He was going. The same things that you know today if you're in Him. Here's what it said. I love this. If I was reading this, I'd highlight it. It says He got up. He got up, and you know what He began to do? He began to wash the disciples' feet. He showed us the way. He said, now do this. Because I've done it. You call me teacher and Lord. So if He can do it, you can do it. And He's saying, walk in humility. Put others before. He showed us the way. And I love how it says in verse 20 in the New Living Translation. It says, He said, now do this. Don't do as I say, the way a lot of parents say. He said, do as I did. Do as I do. He said, this is the path. This is the way. You know what? To blessing. To blessing. That word means favor. You know what His favor is? It's His presence as we walk. You know, a lot of people sing that song, The Blessing, and they want God's blessing, but they don't humble themselves. And that's the way you got to walk. You know, remember Peter? Peter said, you ain't washing my feet. No, you're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus said, well, then you'll have no part. You'll have no part of my flock, of my sheep pen. If you know, a lot of people, we come through the gate, I'm guilty of this, and we shine our own shoes. We want to we'll work real hard to shine our shoes for Christ. We're doing it for your glory when we're really doing it for ourselves. And oftentimes people try and they strive to get out of sin, and it's not done that way. You got to let Jesus get past the outer, past the shoes, right into the heart of you, and clean your feet. He says, you'll have no part of me. And after that last example, He was arrested, crucified. The one we crucified is now Lord. He was arrested, He was crucified, buried. But it says He rose again. And when He said He rose again, you know what I believe He got? I believe He got the keys to the kingdom. I believe He got the keys to the kingdom. And He took, what do we call Him? We call Him chain breaker. Many people think that chain breaker is through some physical thing that they're going through. But really, it was a gate chain. A way into His presence, despite what you're going through. He did away with that. And I believe when He rose to the Father and He came into His presence, I believe He had one word or one phrase. I believe He said one thing. I believe it's not in the Bible, but I believe this is what He said to the Father. He said, Merry Christmas. Right? And you say, why does that get you eat up? Why does that tear you up? It's because you don't know if it doesn't. The way that He's made for you today. Would you stand with me?